Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from the Mully and Haugh Show on 670 The Score. Dan Wiederer is from the Chicago Tribune covering the Bears at Halas Hall, talking to you before the Bears' final preseason game against the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday, August 22nd, a game that will not include the majority of Bears starters. That includes Caleb Williams. Dan, let's start there. Good move, bad move, collective shrug. How did you take the news?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good move. Like I say, I think you're at a point now of the preseason where you've gotten a lot of work in. You still have the practice field to get more work in, and you don't want to tempt fate, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where you are bringing in a risk proposition to things that is greater than the possible reward. And so at this point, you put the starters down, you start to have them preparing for the Tennessee Titans little by little as you go forward. They haven't obviously gotten into the game planning portion of things here, but you just play this like the typical final preseason game in every other year, and you let the backups fight for positioning, and you move forward.
So let's start with obviously Caleb Williams and where we are headed and what we have learned. We're going to get to some of our reactions to episode 3 of Hard Knocks. We'll talk about what Shane Waldren had to say about the offense and certainly some things about Tyson Bagent that remain very intriguing. But Dan, if this is all that we have seen, 43 snaps, are we overreacting to a small sample size? Do you think this is a glimpse of the kind of quarterback that he will be? He'll be somebody that is pretty efficient and definitely has the capability of being explosive. I guess if we're drawing conclusions, because the next time we're going to see Caleb Williams throw a pass is September 8th, what did we learn in preseason?
Well, I think if you're drawing conclusions, you're overreacting, right? And I think that's just the nature of August. It's the taste of football that gets everybody so, invigorated and excited that you tend to overstate what's happening right before you. I think that the key here is taking in I think you said 44 snaps or 43 snaps that Caleb took in the preseason, and then molding that together with what we've seen with our eyes here at training camp, molding that together with what we've heard about the rookie's study habits, his ability to, maneuver around a locker room, create connection, all those things. And you piece that all together to understand that the Bears have a really good chance to have a really good chance with this quarterback working out, right? And that's how I would put it. Look, it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies when the regular season starts. There are going to be some ugly weeks. There are going to be some games that look entirely like the first quarter of that Bengals game on Saturday looked, where it's choppy, it's rickety, it's out of sorts. But you have a quarterback who has every possible gift at the position, as well as many of the intangibles needed to have the chance to be a elite quarterback in this league. And so you see that, you get on board, you buckle your seatbelt, and you go along for the ride, because it should be a really fascinating ride. And I think Caleb has shown us enough in all the areas I just mentioned to believe that the Bears have made the right decision in pushing all their chips in on them. And now, as we've talked about before, it's coaching, it's development, it's the ability to handle the roller coaster.
So sometimes I'll get a little carried away in the morning show, I admit, because you get a response. You respond to guys who call in or people that call in, and so this morning on Wednesday morning, I got in a conversation. Mully led me down a path that all of a sudden I was being asked to, if you had to take one quarterback in the NFC North, who would it be after preseason? Would you take, if you wanted to, win if you wanted to form a team right now, which NFC quarterback would you want for the next 3 to 5 years? Would it be Jared Goff, who is, taking a team to a Super Bowl? Would it be Jordan Love, who in the second half of last season was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? Or would it be Caleb Williams, who is now in 43 snaps, gotten to the point where he's excited at Football City? I got carried away, and I said I would take Caleb Williams. I would definitely. I think even now, if I had to have the conversation and it was a hypothetical, I think I would choose him, and I think he will have the best 3 to 5 year body of work. But I think we can get swept away, and that reminded me of that, because now, I guess to get to my point is, as far as I would want to go, and I think you worded it really well. They have a really good chance to have a really good chance. I think I would want to caution people, and myself included. As far as I want to go is, I haven't seen anything I haven't liked yet.
Right.
I haven't seen anything that has concerned me yet. And I think so it's in that context that you can get carried away, because there have been no negatives. And I think the guy came in and you were expecting something you're not going to like, and I just haven't seen it.
I thought your answer to that question was going to be Justin Fields, that they should have built around Justin Fields. Oh God, did I really just press that button and unearth that conversation
Don't
again?
don't do that, Dad.
I say that
don't
just
like that
because
match.
like I put out a tweet over the weekend, and it was based upon a text I got from a lifelong Bears fan friend of mine over the weekend who watched the entirety of the Bengals game and then the entirety of the Steelers game on Saturday, and sent me a text to say, I apologize for second guessing your push to have the Bears move on from Justin Fields and invest in Caleb Williams. And I think there was a flood of people in the tweet that I put out asking if anyone else was ready to join that party, that acknowledged that there were a lot of people who have had their minds changed and their heads turned by what Caleb Williams has done in the spring and the summer. To circle it into the conversation that you just had, I would give the same answer that you gave. If you gave me the choice of those four quarterbacks for the next 3 to 5 years, I would say the next 6 to 10 years,
Yeah.
I would put my investment on Caleb Williams because the upside is the greatest of all those possible quarterbacks. And what you're trying to do here inside Hallis Hall is change a culture where good enough is no longer good enough. You're striving for excellence. You're striving for the big achievements that have eluded this franchise for forever. And this kid gives you that chance because he has all of the qualities that you need in a superstar quarterback. Now, he still has to become that. And you and I are going to be firm with that at every step of this journey, that you still have to become that. But when people pushed back on me on saying, look, it's been 2 preseason games, you can't really crown Caleb Williams as an upgrade over Justin Fields, I would say, au contraire. Like, you have already identified the chance to be better, right? And if you wanted to subscribe and invest in mediocrity for the next 5 years at the quarterback position, the most important in sports, go ahead. What the Bears are doing is putting their chips on potential, on the possibility of high level greatness that we have not experienced at that position in this city. And there's no way that even if Caleb Williams never wins a Super Bowl, that the decision to go down this path was the wrong one.
I appreciate your need to be thorough and to kind of go back and complete the sentence and finish the argument and go back and compare. But to me, it's patently absurd to compare Caleb Williams to Justin Fields now when we are comparing Caleb Williams to Patrick Mahomes, Andrew Luck, Joe Burrow, the great quarterbacks of our era. And I think that it just underscores how, in retrospect, kind of ridiculous that whole debate was. And I understand it at the time, and we weighed it and said, and I did think it was a winter of choosing between good or better and all those things. But this is a guy that has come in, and the comparison to Justin Fields of that conversation seems rather silly right now.
It wasn't even
based on what we have seen.
Good versus better. It was decent with the chance at good versus better with the chance at something you've never experienced in the history of your life.
Yeah.
And so here they go, down this road, and it's going to be fun to watch. And David, I think probably as striking as anything over these 5 weeks of training camp has been the daily acclaim from the coaches and the players inside this building about what their experience with Caleb Williams has been. Our experience is going to be at an outsider's distance, right? The people in this building can get in the meeting rooms with Caleb Williams. They can go out to dinner with Caleb Williams. They can be on the sideline during a game with Caleb Williams, and they can provide a level of insight and expertise on the wiring of the player that helps you form your opinions on what they're working with here. And I think we've heard a lot of that every single day in late July and August here at Hallis Hall.
It's been consistent from Matt Eberflus on down, from Ryan Poles on down. We heard some more about Ryan Poles talking about the culture and talking about what he likes about this team this week. And it's been really refreshing. Shane Waldren, the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, also talked about Caleb Williams. And Dan, why don't you preview what we're going to hear from the offensive coordinator? You were there, and Shane Waldren continues to deal with things, I think, in a professional way. He certainly it's preseason, but he sounds like a guy who has done this before and sounds like the Bears offense is in good hands. What are we about to hear?
Yeah, I just thought Shane had some really good perspective over the weekend and about the experience over the weekend with Caleb inside the Bengals game in terms of his recall, his ability to come back to the sideline, explain everything that he sees in great detail, his ability to kind of feel out the position. And so there was some really good perspective from the offensive coordinator on where this can all lead the Bears and their offense with the rookie quarterback at the helm. Here's some of Shane Waldren from, I guess it was Monday afternoon.
I think, part of that, is just seeing concepts for the first time sometimes in those live game actions. But, he had the great, the ball out to Cole, the ball out to Simba, some of those where he's showing that he plays in rhythm, he can play in rhythm, find those throws. And then, what's pretty cool to watch is when the play breaks down, it almost seems like it's in slow motion for him, and he can find the different rush lanes, being smart with the ball, break and contain, and creating some explosives down the field. So, for us with him, it's about finding the balance of those two things, and I think he's doing a good job of progressing with that. And like you mentioned, feeling out what are those windows, what are the windows that are too tight to fit it in, or what are the windows that are legit completions before getting into potential scramble modes.
How do you sort of describe his ability to not only understand what he sees, but to explain it in a way that's productive for you and then the guys around him?
Yeah, I think it's a great trait that he has. Like when we get over to the sideline and you look at the surface, but before you even look at the surface, he can already tell you, why behind each read. And I think that's the most important part. If he's not seeing it clearly or something like that, that's where you really need to, go back and go through it. But, he sees it clearly, can really talk about, different windows. And also from the quarterback's lens is totally different than what you see from the stands lens or the coach on the sideline lens. That ground level, where was the defender exactly at when you hit the top of your drop? And he's so, he easily can clearly articulate every one of those points in regards to the space or what happened on a play.
When you talk about Caleb's ability to understand and explain things that he sees in the game, is that normal for a player at his stage, for someone who hasn't played in a game yet?
I think for him, it's normal with our interactions. I think, like I said, each different rookie quarterback is a totally separate entity because they've had different backgrounds, different things. So I think for Caleb, just sticking in our world this year with him, and Austin Reed's done a nice job as far as a young quarterback that's been able to come in and pick up a system and have good understanding. But no, that's been something as a good foundational starting point for Caleb that then allows him to build the offense, build the concepts around him, knowing that he's got that starting point of being able to see, what the defense presents each snap.
Shane Waldron, you get the sense the Bears have an inkling of what they have, and they're just trying to temper enthusiasm, maybe their own, and wait for things to unfold and play out. Because when he talks about things slowing down, this is a concept that's difficult to grasp in Chicago. But Caleb Williams has a way so far of making the game seem like things are slowing down for him, and he processes so quickly that you find it difficult not to get excited. And I think you hear it in the way Shane Waldron describes it.
Also cool to hear Shane there just talking about specifics, right? Like I think it was a little bit bumpy in the early going with Shane at the dais because we were talking about so many vague things and you don't know the offense yet. Now that we're getting into games, now that he's knowing his personnel, now that the offense is starting to take shape, you're hearing a little bit more insight that really resonates. And that was evident in that clip as well. And so it's going to be fun to kind of go on this ride because every week there's going to be something a little bit different. And look, like David, I asked Tyson Bagent today if he was going to take one tool out of Caleb Williams's quarterback toolbox to put into his own game. And he got a kind of surprising answer. He said he would take his pocket feel. You're sort of anticipating him saying, well, the ability to make a 45-yard completion throwing across your body, while moving to your left. You would think that would be what you'd want to borrow. But similar to what Shane was talking about there, Caleb's feel for windows on the football field, which you've heard the word window used a lot here in the last few weeks since Caleb has started playing, and his feel for rush lanes and where pressure is coming from, it has really left an impression on everybody inside that quarterback's room. And that is no small thing.
I think it's a good observation too, and something to remember because we talked this morning on the Mully and Haugh show. Rick Spielman, the former general manager of the Vikings, who now does some work for the 33rd team, has his own podcast with the first pick, I believe. And he talked about how already the Caleb Williams is showing what you want to do is you want to keep him in the pocket because he's so good on the run, and he's shown the propensity to be accurate the Cole Kmet in 1 week, and then obviously the Dunze play in the next week. But Dan, I kind of always have thought of Caleb Williams as being most dangerous when he's just dropping back and throwing in the pocket. I don't think just because he can throw on the run doesn't mean you want to keep him in the pocket, because that was what Rick was suggesting. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what defenses will do. But I think that like the 60-yarder to Tyler Scott, that was in the pocket, and that was on the money.
It was a clean pocket.
It was a clean pocket, and he was able to drop back and throw in rhythm. And I just think he's one of these guys that's as dangerous either way.
I think he's most dangerous outside the pocket, but I think he's more dangerous than people realize inside the pocket. And that's only going to grow as he gets more experience, as he understands what he's seeing, as he continues to get comfort. It's amazing. Can I give you a little tease here for our audience, for my audience?
Yeah.
So I had the chance this week to sit down with Caleb Williams for the annual summer one-on-one with Chicago Bears QB1. And that will be running this weekend on chicagotribune.com. We will have audio from that for the Take the North podcast next week. Just to really bring this tease around, I thought this was humorous. I put the audio into my transcription software on my computer, and it generates a AI summary of what the interview is. And so this is the AI generated summary of what you can be anticipating over the weekend. It says the conversation revolves around Speaker One, that would be Caleb Williams, his journey and mindset as an NFL player. Speaker One emphasizes the importance of staying steadfast and maintaining a neutral pace, hoping for a breakthrough in game one. They discuss the complexity of playing the position, drawing inspiration from Tom Brady and other successful athletes like Aaron Rodgers and Kobe Bryant. Speaker One highlights the significance of competitive stamina, knowing his teammates, and the power of connection. They also touch on the importance of grand goals, finding grace, and the support from the team. The team's progress through offense, defense, and special teams is noted, with high expectations for the coming season.
That's really good. That's really complete. One can only hope that the Tribune bosses don't get wind of that complete explanation and decide to run that summary instead of your prose.
No, I've been cleaning up the transcript, taking out some of the ums, the buts, the likes, the as, and that should be ready to go. And obviously it'll give us some more to talk about next week as we're entering week 0. Next week is week 0, which is cuts week and the bridge to the regular season. So that should be fun next week.
Let's talk a little bit about Tyson Bagent before we get into our thoughts on Hard Knocks. Tyson Bagent, to me, has had a very good training camp, and I think solidified his spot as a number 2 quarterback. If his job was ever threatened, he certainly responded. I'm not sure that it was. Mark Rippon was here because he knows the offense. He spent 25 days with Shane Waldren in Seattle, so that gave him a little bit of an advantage to be able to be a resource in the room. But Tyson Bagent, as going out against the Bengals, every time he's gone out, you've seen some progress. And Dan, I think that really very quietly, because of all the attention paid the other quarterback, right, one, Tyson Bagent has had a professional preseason.
Well, Thursday night in an ideal world would be Tyson Bagent's final on-field game action of the 2024 season, right? He would play this preseason finale in Kansas City and then go into QB2 role behind Caleb Williams for the entire year. But I wrote for a piece that will be coming at chicagotribune.com on Thursday. They turned the lights off on me here for those watching on YouTube. That Tyson was actually the more efficient and more productive quarterback on Saturday afternoon. And his touchdown pass, the 25-yarder to Dante Pettis up the right sideline, had Caleb made that same play, the sports talk debate shows on cable would have lost their minds this week. And so it was another reminder that the development of Tyson Bagent continues, and that this kid is competitively driven to squeeze everything he can out of his career here in the NFL. I had a chance to visit with him at length a couple weeks ago, and that will be reflected in the piece that will preview the Chiefs game on Thursday. And one of the things that Tyson said is he has put his feet on the ground here in year 2. This isn't just a cup of coffee in the NFL. He said, I'm here, and I'm here to hopefully stay for a while. And then he doubled down on that today, David, with the entire group here at Hallis Hall, and said, I have unbelievable grand aspirations that you wouldn't even be able to imagine for what I want to do with the rest of my football career. And that's not to be just blown off, because I do think that he has the skill set for the position and a work ethic that's going to allow him to maximize his potential as much as he can.
Got to be patient. It's unlikely to happen in Chicago, but if he gets a glimpse as you go out and you handle the lights, you want to go take care of the lights. Tyson Bagent is a guy who is in a position to really cultivate and manage his career as long as he stays healthy, as long as he stays as patient as he sounds and professional and diligent. He's handling this perfectly. He also, I think, has the perspective of somebody who appreciates his own story and how far he has come. He's not going to get antsy. He doesn't wonder why he's not starting. I think these are realistic. He's pretty grounded for somebody who has come so far so fast relative to where he began.
Incredibly grounded, has a really cool combination of gratitude for the opportunity and drive to make the most out of it. And the other thing that I would mention is we obviously, for obvious reasons, made a lot out of the summer workout he did for his buddy Derek Gallagher's birthday, the burpee broad jump 1 mile, which was an example that Tyson gave us a few weeks ago about grinding his absolute face off. But I got to follow up with him on the way he was grinding his absolute face off as a quarterback. And some of the things that he said he was trying to work on in the spring and summer, and really going back to last winter, is becoming a more dynamic thrower, being able to shorten his stride in a way that allowed him to get rid of the ball quicker, to be able to rip it with anticipation. And then I said, look, like there's a widespread knock on you that your arm isn't strong enough, that you can't throw it as deep as NFL quarterbacks need to throw it. And he said, look, like I spent a lot of this summer throwing the bleep out of the deep ball. And that was more than just throwing deep ball to people. It was understanding that core strength is a part of that, understanding that he wants to keep his base in a way that allows him to make that throw, understanding that his arm angle has to be consistent with how he throws the ball normally, and it's not drastically being altered when he's trying to find a little extra and throw it deep. And so he has put intentional, detailed work into addressing his weaknesses, even as he tries to grasp this new offense that Shade Waldren is putting in and his role here. And so there's part of that. I'll let you comment on that. And then there's one other thing on Tyson that I'd like to feed in here before we move on.
The offense actually, I think, could be good for Tyson Bagent because he is a mobile quarterback. What we have seen is that, short passing game, the quick passing game is something that accentuates his strengths. Moving pocket as well, running bootlegs, these kinds of things get him on the move, and I think he can be a little bit more dangerous. So it'll be fun to see him grow. He's a good guy to have in the room. I know that you either want a real enthusiastic young backup who's eager to learn everything and the guy that you can trust not is going to make waves, or you want the savvy veteran who isn't going to be afraid to sit because he's already enjoyed his time maybe as a starter. Tyson Bagent is certainly the former more than the latter, but I think he's a good fit as the Bears backup.
Well, that ties into the other thing I was going to say, is because now, if the ideal world happens here at Halas Hall and Caleb Williams takes every single snap of the 2024 season, Tyson Bagent has to become a reliable resource as QB2. That is a huge part of the backup quarterback job. It's being a resource, a sounding board, ability to feed information to a guy, to be able to sound things out on the sideline during a game, get in the classroom, do those things. And I kind of asked Tyson how he's more equipped to do that in year two than he was as obviously a rookie who was learning everything and the world was spinning. And he said, yeah, there were times in 2023 where he'd be in the quarterback's room and Luke Getsy and Justin Fields and Nathan Peterman would be having a conversation and spitballing ideas. And he'd be like, I don't really have anything to offer here. I just feel a little bit out of place. And he does feel like his acumen has improved and his understanding of the game and what he sees from opposing defense has gotten to a point where he hopes he can be pretty helpful to Caleb going forward. The Bears obviously hope that, but as you know, that's a huge, huge part of the backup quarterback role, because you're going to spend most weeks not seeing practice reps, not seeing game reps, not getting a lot of opportunity to play. And so you've got to be valuable inside the building, and it's got to be as a resource to QB1.
And part of that involves the personality, just the power of being somebody who is pleasant to be around. And this brings us to Hard Knocks. I enjoyed the Bagent phase, or part of episode 3, the Bagency being reopened. We saw some of Travis. We got a glimpse of Tyson. It was fun to hear him talk about Tats. I liked everything, but I love this story, Dan. And I think that, as far as Hard Knocks is concerned, episode 3 was my favorite yet. And the Bagents were only a part of that. But I do think you started to get a glimpse of what you're talking about. This is a fun guy to be around. It's an easy guy to want to have around.
I thought episode 3 of Hard Knocks would be your least favorite because they included a clip of Travis Bagent beating NFL Network's Tom Pelissero at arm wrestling, but they did not show the clip of Take the North podcast host David Haugh taking down Travis the Beast Bagent. And so I thought you might have some qualms with that.
you kind of know that I'm glad that's Chicago's little secret. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. We didn't need to take that national yet, right?
I'm really okay with that being kind of a viral local moment if it was ever that, but that's okay. Yeah, I saw, well, I mean, and I also didn't want to embarrass Pelissero because I could probably beat him too.
That's probably true. The quote that I had starred in my notebook from watching Hard Knocks from Tyson was, "I'm not just some chump in the room. I can play a little." And that seems to be the mission that Tyson Bagent is on, that this isn't just some cute underdog story of a guy who made it and is happy to be here. Like, he's not happy to be here. He wants to do so much more in his career. What that means this year is going to be a little bit different than it will likely mean in 2025 and beyond. But you've got a guy here that combines this incredible grounded nature of being a small town kid from Martinsburg, West Virginia, with this dude who's got a type A mentality, and wants to be a really good starting quarterback in the NFL when his time comes. And so you're right. It's an easy story to root for. He'll get a chance to play and start the game in Kansas City. Probably won't play more than a series or two before they flip it over to Brett Rippon and Austin Reed. But embrace the Tyson Bagent story. And as we've talked about previously, anybody who's resisting it is being stubborn, and they're missing out, quite frankly.
Last couple minutes, what'd you think of Hard Knocks episode 3? What was your favorite moment? What was your least favorite moment?
Yeah, maybe the best of the 3 episodes, as you mentioned. I think for me, without question, the most compelling footage was the Matthew Judon trade pursuit stuff with Ryan Poles. And it gave you a glimpse into how aggressive the Bears were in pursuing the trade. For me, there's a little exchange between director of personnel Jeff King and Matt Eberflus on the sidelines as everything's going on behind the scenes. And Matt says, "You think we're going to be able to get this across the finish line?" And Jeff King says, "I do." And we realize they didn't. And then we get the sort of explanations for why they didn't. And it was wanting to not only acquire Matthew Judon, but have the certainty of what the contract would look like beyond this season. And they clearly didn't get there. And so the Patriots took the same offer from the Falcons, the 3rd-round pick, and made the deal. And Matthew Judon still has not signed an extension with Atlanta. And you could feel both Ryan Poles' pride in his discipline and what he always kind of leans on in tough decisions, with his raw disappointment of, "Oh man, I thought we had something. The fish was on the hook and it slithered off." And he's kind of pacing in his office. Like you could feel that raw emotion of like, man, I really wanted this, but I'm going to try to reassure myself that the reason it didn't happen is for valid reasons.
I love that behind the scenes look. That's what Hard Knocks is there for, to give us that kind of access that we don't typically have. Even as guys who cover the team, you're not going to see that on a regular basis. I also think that's going to be a clip that ages well for Ryan Poles in his career, pointing to his discipline, because that's an expensive rental if it turns out to be that. A 3rd-round pick for a guy who may not be guaranteed to be there more than 1 year.
Well, and it could become even more expensive, right? If you then lose all leverage and the guy, brings a ski mask in to negotiate his next contract.
All of a sudden, you got to pay him. Exactly. Yeah. So my favorite, besides that one, I love the Judon background, but I also thought it was hilarious to see Tory Taylor followed around and then have the gumption to say to Caleb Williams after the 3rd 3 and out that, "I thought you said we weren't going to punt. We did it 3 times in the first quarter." That was great. I mean, that gives you a sense of just the camaraderie that exists on a football sideline. And also the fact that, Caleb Williams is viewed as a guy that is approachable and one of the guys. You don't say that to somebody you're scared of, and I don't think, or has an aura. And I thought that was hilarious.
Definitely a quip that you save for the preseason, right? You're probably not going to want to do that in week 2.
No.
Like, if the Texans are giving it to you on primetime on Sunday night, Tory Taylor would be best going down by Cairo and having a conversation instead of coming to Caleb and rattling his cage. But I did like that. And I did like, as Brad Biggs would tell you, that Tory Taylor, quote unquote, dunked on our friend Patrick Finley when Patrick Finley asked him if he wanted the crocodile punter as his nickname. And I think his official quote was, "How original."
Oh, how original. Yeah. How original.
And I like that he's not into this, the Australian shtick. Like he's going to go throw a shrimp on the Barbie and crack a can of Foster's and just be this Australian on the sideline. He's a punter. He spent 4 years at Iowa. He's ready to do more than just be a novelty act around Halas Hall. He wants to be one of the best punters in the league, and I like the fact that he doesn't hide that even as a rookie.
There are a lot of other things to like. I really like the way it was put together. I've been a fan of the way that they have done this, but it's consistent to me, and that's another thing. This is clearly Hard Knocks starring Caleb Williams, Hard Knocks, starring Caleb Williams and his supporting cast. And there are a lot of supporting actors that are doing nice jobs. Matt Eberflus with the nicknames is hilarious. That's kind of the dad joke stuff that we know he's kind of leaning into. But this is all about Caleb Williams, and when he completed that 45-yarder and he said to the ref, how do you like that? I mean, that is the persona. Right. He's already there.
That line was cool, right? Like, it just, to be in that moment and its presence, right? And then the one that I like the best is, Caleb scores the touchdown and he goes over to the sideline and he's just holding on to that ball. And Tony Medlin, who knows how to take care of a ball and get it back to you and maybe paint it up and say, this is your first touchdown, whatever else, try to get it. And Caleb stiff-armed him. And then he stiff-armed another equipment guy and said, no, I'm going to hold on to this. And then at halftime, he just went and stashed it in his bag. Like, he wasn't going to let anybody else get that ball from him. And I like the fact that while he has that presence, he still has kind of that innocence of being like, this is my first touchdown in the NFL and I'm not letting anyone get near this football.
I love that. Again, haven't seen anything yet that I haven't liked, and I think it's easy to understand why Chicago is so excited. Dan, anything else before we get out of here and get ready for preseason finale?
Yeah, the only thing today here, Wednesday at Haugh Hall, the buses have already pulled out. I'm the last one here, which is why those watching on the YouTube channel can see I'm in the empty cubicle room here in the media room. But we heard from Eric Washington today, and he was the latest person here to, talk about the heightened chemistry and camaraderie that he's feeling from his defense. That has been a consistent theme here. You hear that a lot in NFL buildings in the month of August. But Eric Washington sort of brings a perspective because he's been around good defenses in Buffalo. He was here at the end of the Lovie Smith era, and so he knows what that high-level brotherhood and camaraderie and chemistry can lead to when it translates to on-field work. And he believes it's been translating to on-field work here in the month of August. That's significant. I also asked him about the philosophy of trying to create pressure with only the front four is something they've talked about a lot here. But now you've got a secondary that can help you with your pass rush, David. And I mean that in two ways. Number one, we saw on Saturday what Kyler Gordon and other defensive backs can be as blitzers. And we're also seeing in camp every single day what coverage does to make a quarterback hold the football. And so I think there's going to be some defensive linemen really happy to play with this secondary this year where they say, man, I just got 2 coverage sacks today, and that secondary has become part of our pass rush. And Eric Washington detailed that a little bit. We can maybe get into a little bit more of that next week, but I thought that was notable.
It's a good topic because they go hand in hand. As happy as a defensive lineman will be, the secondary people in coverage are going to be even happier because the ball is going to come out just a half second quicker, and maybe it's too early and they can make a break. And then all of a sudden either they pick it off or they break it up. But either way, it's a good connection. And you're right. Eric Washington was here when times were good. And I think that there's a sense that this is a very much for people of a certain age can remember the Lovie Smith defense coming into its own when takeaways were part of the everyday culture, and they started to be produced more often on Sundays like we saw the second half of last season. And it's just a mindset and a mentality that takes over an entire football team.
Yeah, and right now this team is in a good mindset and a good mentality. Again, the month of September is far different than the month of August. The month of October is even different than that. And then in November and December, you and I are hoping at some point that we have a team that is firmly in competition because it makes the season a lot more enjoyable, a lot more compelling. So we'll see where they can take this.
No doubt about it. We'll be back after the Chiefs game to talk about what happened. We'll break it down. Roster cut downs are right around the corner. We have a lot more to go. We're just getting started. And thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch us on the 670 Scores YouTube page. For Adam Studzinski, our producer, Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune, I'm David Haugh for the Mully and Haugh Show. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.